What's a hack in your industry that customers aren't really supposed to find out? Former local journalist here. If you want to know something about your town or pretty much anything locally or find something hinky that you want investigated, just call or email them and ask, what's happening with that? And then insert weird item in city, budget, shut down road, cop who got fired, etc. When I was off deadline, I actually loved fielding these questions. They were mainly from old people and pretty much worked as customer service for the city a lot. I directed people to local programs that would help them. I confirmed the start and proposed end dates of construction and told people what companies had pulled permits to build that new restaurant on Main Street. Local journalists have a wealth of knowledge in all departments of what is going on in your city because they drift between one or the other frequently, and we ask the other reporters in the cubicle next to us too. They are your tour guides, social workers, watchdogs, and public defenders if you just ask them. They aren't doing it for the money, cries, and past due bills. They're doing it for the love of their community. They all really embrace the localism aesthetic. I guess this is sort of a, quote, not supposed to find out thing because if everyone did it, they'd never get their work done either. And so I guess he was also a free private investigator? Story 2. This was 6 to 7 years ago, so may not be relevant, but when I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, the higher-ups were so tunnel-visioned on positive customer reviews that if there was any problem at all, we would write off anything from gas to whole days of rentals. We had a few repeat customers that would catch on and habitually complain about dumb things to get parts of the bill discounted. Only a rating of completely satisfied counted, and it was tied to bonus and promotion, so a huge incentive to make people happy. One time, we did about 3,000 car returns a day during peak season. It was such a profitable location that we gave away so much. People leaving in sports cars if they have a mid-size rental, free GPSs, etc. Some guy returned a car and said, hey, I got a warning light to add wiper fluid, so I went and spent a few bucks and topped it off. My manager gave him $150 off his rental for the inconvenience. He wasn't even mad about having to top off the fluid, he was just letting us know. Another time, we had a family with a full Disney trip booked with young kids late at night. You can tell which families are just kind of barely getting this trip pulled off and aren't really flush with cash. They asked about extending their rental before leaving, and I tried to match their daily rate and ended up setting their weekly rate as the daily rate. They basically got another week free. They were insanely grateful, and my manager didn't bat an eye. Story 3. Accounting is called a sticky business because we don't lose clients often, unless we are terrible. We continually raise rates and overcharge because we know clients will just stay with the same person they know rather than search around. It may be hard to evaluate who is a good versus bad versus great accountant, but that won't matter unless you have a difficult situation or specialized work to be done. What matters is you might find an accountant willing to do the same work for a lot cheaper if you can just put in a little extra time to ask them to ballpark their rates. Think of it this way. People regularly go to different grocery stores, convenience stores, and gas station marts to save a few dollars on things like eggs, candy, or milk. Oh, I found eggs for $1.50 when they're normally $2.50 is some big accomplishment. What if you found an accountant willing to do your work for $3,000 instead of $5,000? Isn't that worth a few more calls and meetings that you would gladly use time on to find cheaper eggs? Also, if they're a CPA, it would behoove you to see if they've been reprimanded by the state CPA board. It's super easy to not run afoul of the state board, at least in my state, North Carolina, so if they have, it's a cause for concern. Story 4. Dog trainer. This is a hack we want people to understand. One reason we can get your dog to do something so fast is because we use a high rate of enforcement. Example, I'm training your dog to walk on leash without pulling and we practice in your driveway. I feed the dog 20 tiny pieces of food by my knee as we walk to the end of the driveway. The first time a client tries the exercise, they may use 5. The mechanics of the exercise look easy, but it takes time to get used to. And when people are practicing on their own, they do other things instead of focusing on the exercise. They forget how often they need to reinforce the dog for doing the right thing. If they do the exercise for 2 minutes during each walk with a high rate of reinforcement, ROR, that may be all it takes. And once the dog starts to learn, you can gradually slow down the ROR. Also, stop calling your dog's name to correct them. Their name is not a punishment. It should be used for endearment and get them to come to you. Use a real correction because calling their name over and over doesn't do anything and they don't understand. Dogs, I don't know about other animals, are always studying body language and vocal tone. If you do and say the same thing the same way every time, the dog will learn very fast. It's posture, body language, and tone. I learned that a long time ago and every dog I've had is very obedient. I don't have to yell or discipline them. I've also had multiple dogs that would like to ignore me when I called their name. I know well enough that dog knows his name. I have an older dog, so if the new dog doesn't come when I call it, I just call my old dog's name. Works 100% of the time. The aloof dog that's ignoring you will come when you call the other dog to see if it got treats, etc. Story 5. Any Marriott booking, be it partially with points with a 3-day cancellation policy, can be canceled the same day of the booking without any fees. If you're using a free night award, make sure you're using the closest one in value to the reservation's cost. It's awful to see 85K points FNA wasted on bookings worth 25K points. Kind of unethical, but all calls to Marriott hotels go to the same call centers. If you're in a hurry for any matter, just select New Reservation and your call will be prioritized in the queue. The guys at the call centers cannot transfer you to the front desk. You'll need to go through the menu to hear the option. Even though Expedia, Booking.com, Hotels.com, etc. offer discounts, it's worth it to book directly from Marriott, as you'll have support via phone and you can get discounts for being a AAA member, a senior citizen over 62, or a government employee. Avoid the Marriott Vacation Club promotion. It's just timeshares, and you'll need to attend an awful presentation. If you can brighten a call center worker's day, say yes to any promotion that involves transferring at the end of the call. He'll get a reward, and you can hang up as soon as he transfers you. Story 6. When a car salesman offers you a premium car care package, don't buy it. It's a scam. Say you're buying a new car and I offer you the premium car care package. It'll only cost you X amount of money per month, but every time you come to the dealership, you get premium car wash, we hose it down at a proper car wash, interior detailing and rejuvenation, we use compressed air to make the dust go away, sometimes a man uses a wet paper towel. Functions check and clock synchronization, check if all the lights work, heater, AC work, and set up the clock if it's wrong. Summer and winter inspection and free wiper fluid refill, only done once per season. Check tire tread, visually check tire pressure, look at temperature gauge to make sure car isn't overheating and add water in the summer, tiny amount of wiper fluid in winter. Visually inspect brake discs to see why they're not scratched by worn-out brake pads. Assistance when you are on the move. You call us, and then we can call a tow truck for you at your expense, only possible during business hours. Basically, we charge for simple things you can do all by yourself. Also, if a car dealership sells you a used car and they tell you it has been fully serviced, still take it to your local mechanic and have it serviced properly. Story 7. In medicine, if you tell your primary that your previous PCP ordered a test, gave you a medication, placed a referral, etc., and that you need to have it re-prescribed or ordered again, you can get your primary to order or at least consider ordering near anything, at least if it's not a controlled substance or an expensive, unusual diagnostic study. The problem is that offices are absolutely bad at transferring their records to each other, and confirming that story takes a huge amount of time. For example, if you have knee pain and tell that your primary diagnosed you with a specific knee issue years back and that you went to PT and it felt better last time, and I'm sitting in your chart not able to find any record of that, will I spend 10 minutes of my time trying to hunt down previous records to confirm this history, obtain reports from physical therapy about the specific exercises you were doing and any imaging studies you had and whatever else? Will I have you come in for what, as far as I can tell, is an appointment to reassess a known diagnosis that someone else already appropriately diagnosed and treated? Or will I click a button that takes 5 seconds to get you the appointment with PT that you want that solved your issue last time, completely unaware that the history I was given was completely fabricated? The reality for something benign like a visit to PT is that there's just not enough time to do anything besides send that order and move on. Story 8. Making an application run on multiple platforms, Android, macOS, Windows, etc., is a huge pain, but what do all platforms have in common? They can all run Chrome, and Chrome can run portable but slow code. So what do developers do? Developers write applications as standalone web pages and bundle a whole copy of the Chrome browser to view that web page. The application now takes hundreds of megabytes of storage, eats RAM like candy, and every interaction is massively slowed down because it has to go through so many layers. The address bar is hidden and the right-click menu is replaced, but it's still a web browser under the hood. They're basically saving developer time by wasting your time and device resources. There's a big reason why modern applications like Teams, Discord, Spotify, etc. feel so slow. Technically, Chromium, since it's missing some features like Google account login, the most popular framework that uses this technique is Electron. Story 9. Former automotive body process engineer here. Don't buy the first or last year of a car. First year, they're still working out the bugs in the manufacturing process, and the last year, they're focused on getting the new model processes working and less attention on the outgoing model. The very best year is the mid-cycle refresh. Processes should be stable by then, and the refreshed exterior are such minor tweaks from a manufacturing perspective, it's not affecting quality, and as a perk, it usually looks better than the original. The last year's models would be bad because, yes, the large problems have been worked out, but in manufacturing, there will always be variability that is monitored and either adjusted where the part is made, the parts themselves, or the assembly jig to keep things within tolerances. Imagine you have playing cards and you have three buddies making a hole in the same spot in each card individually with different suppliers and equipment, and you have a time limit on how long it takes to make their hole. Over time, I'll guarantee even with the jig, they'll start to vary. Tool got worn out, your card vendor this week sent card stock that's slightly thicker than the other humidity at friend three's location, causing the cards to swell. In a model change year, the folks that monitor and adjust for variability have tasks for the new model that takes their full attention away from the current model and splits it up. They're still the same highly qualified people as they were yesterday, but they're being pulled in more directions now. Where I worked, we had one ultra-accurate scanner to measure the entire body to find variability. Guess who got priority on the table? I've got 3 portable units to measure smaller parts out on the floor. One's at a vendor location tracking down a supplier problem. The other is figuring out why an A-pillar inner panel in the new model is twisted. And I get the bad one to figure out why the tranny dog leg on the outer panel doesn't align well with the striker plate. Anyhow, that's why the last year should be avoided in most cases. These are all generalizations that always have an exception or 3. Well, the last year usually shouldn't be nearly as bad as the first year though, right? Setting up the new model shouldn't distract that much attention from the people producing the current model. And if you know any better, please do feel free to comment and let me know down in the comments. I'm sure all of us would appreciate that. Story 10. Customer is a bit of a stretch here, but I work on federally funded research, so in a way, my customer is the tax-paying public. Universities take up to 50% of all federal grants as overhead. Half of the money in the NIH sends for cancer research or studies instead lines the pockets of talentless administrators. Then we, at long last, finish our experiments and analysis. We need to pay journalists to host our work so that people pay them to read our work. We don't see a cent. Finally, when that's all said and done, after the admin takes the budgets in half to pay the football coach and the journal charges us another $10K for quote-unquote editors who they didn't pay, it goes to the pharma companies and hospitals who take this federally funded work and sell it back to the taxpayer. Research is a scam. Everyone except the admin of universities, journals, and hospitals suffer. If you have a child or friend who wants to go into science, tell them it's not worth it. Have it as a hobby, not a job. Story 11. If you're in Canada and have a retail trading account and want to convert CDN cash to US, depending on the urgency of the conversion, if you don't need it now and it is a significant amount, don't just convert it over and pay your bank between 1.5 to 3% on the exchange. DLR is CDN, DLR.U is US currency, so buy the DLR. Next business day, transfer it to the US side of your account. Sell DLR.U in the US account, it takes the DLR and covers. That way, you only pay whatever your commission is on the buy-sell, you don't pay the conversion rate. As I'm typing this, the spot rate on the market is 1.36. My firm is charging 1.39 if you just transfer over directly. Anything that is going to cost you less than $20 on exchange rate, go ahead and just transfer over. But if you are transferring, for example, 10,000 CDN to US, there's a difference of $280. If you're planning ahead, buy the DLR, then transfer it over on settlement, sell the DLR.U, you only pay the commission of $20 on the buy-sell. You're also looking at a 3-day movement. If it's a rush, it's too bad to be you pay the extra rate. If you have a margin account, you can do a true Norbert's Gambit and buy today, initiate the transfer, and put the sell order today so that it takes a day out. Buy settles, gets transferred immediately to cover the sell that settles the same day. But most retail outlets require you to do this through their phone brokers, so you have to pay the broker rate on the one side of the transaction, so it's also more expensive. They do this to try to encourage you to do the transfer manually yourself in your account so that they make the $280 off of you. Pays to plan. Story 12. There are 16 NoFault states and 1 territory in America. Arkansas, Delaware, Florida, Hawaii, Kansas, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, North Dakota, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Utah, and Puerto Rico. Michigan and New Jersey have some additional complexities that take me a full day of training to discuss. The shortest possible version is, quote, if you live in Michigan or New Jersey, ask your auto insurance and your health insurance how they address injuries caused by car accidents. No fault means it does not matter who is responsible for the accident. Your auto insurance pays your medical bills, full stop. It doesn't matter if you got into an accident by an intoxicated driver without insurance while you were at a stoplight and they were texting a full manifesto. Your insurance pays your medical bills. It's even more than that. If you live in a no-fault state, if you are a pedestrian and you get into an accident crossing the street, your auto insurance pays your medical bill. Most people know all of that. Here's a part you might not be aware of. No fault is not exclusive to injuries caused by collisions. If you close your fingers in your car door, that is a no-fault injury. You need to call your auto insurance and report it because they are liable for those medical bills. If you were injured as a direct result of contact with an insured automobile, that is a no-fault injury. Working on your car and the engine block fell out and hurt your foot, that's a no-fault injury. Call your auto insurance. Getting out of your car, tripped on the seatbelt and got hurt on the concrete, that is not a no-fault injury. Causation was the concrete that you tripped on the seatbelt is irrelevant. This is extremely important because no-fault injuries need to be reported to your auto carrier. They need to have an open case so they can pay your claims, because if your health insurance discovers that any claim is related to a no-fault injury, and believe me, we will, they will deny it and anything that looks related. And there is a timely filing deadline for you to notify your carrier about the injury. In New York, it's 60 days. If 60 days goes by and you haven't told your auto insurance about a no-fault injury, they will deny it as non-compliant. And then your health insurance will be denied as eligible for no fault, and then that bill lands on you and there is nothing anyone can do about it. Every single insurance carrier in this country is looking for an excuse to not have to pay the claim. Existing regulations very strictly prevent us from doing so without a specific reason. If you give us a reason, we will jump on it. Side note, pretty much anything that does not have doors, windows, or seatbelts are not eligible for no fault. Motorcycles, ATVs, snowmobiles, your health insurance is responsible for those claims. Also, and this may come as a shock, any injury caused in the process of committing a crime is not eligible for NF. Your health insurance pays those claims. That includes DUIs, attempting to evade police, driving in a stolen car. If you get injured while driving intoxicated, your insurance will refuse those claims, and that refusal is not grounds for your health insurance to deny the claim. One last thing, if your auto insurance tells you to attend an IME independent medical exam, no matter how inconvenient it is, you do it. If you miss an IME, your auto insurance will deny your claims, and that denial is grounds for your health insurance to deny the claims too. Story 13. If you are immobile, wheelchair, and on a plane and it goes down, hope the people on either side of you will help you instead of grabbing their luggage because the flight attendant won't have time to get you out. You got 90 seconds to get out in most cases, and you won't. In a plane crash, a 20-pound bag is like holding a 600-pound bowling ball. You physically can't hold your bag from expulsion in a plane crash. Your bag is going to fly out of your hands. Flight attendants are often trained that in the event of a water ditching, don't tell the mothers to tie the infant life vest around their hand because if they pass out and sink for some reason, they are taking their infant with them. In a plane crash, the bins overhead will probably open and or come crashing down. The seats should prevent you from any injuries and is part of the reason why all seats should be upright for landing. Also, if a tray table is down in a crash, it could cause an injury. You have to stow your laptop with a hinge for taxi and takeoff landing because 20 years ago, laptops with hinges weighed 20 pounds that could be harmful in a crash. Laptops today weigh less than 5 pounds, but because of that hinge, it's considered a laptop and therefore must be stowed. Get a tablet and separate keyboard and you are good to go with using it in your hands. Pet owners aboard airplanes rarely ever read and abide by the contract they sign for pet transport. They often have their animal out on their lap, and when it harms the person next to them, they are usually banned for life. Rich pet people pay a crooked doctor to label their pet as a service animal so they can have it on their lap, but a 10-pound chihuahua isn't a service animal as it can't stop you at stoplights or do anything besides being emotional support. The vegetarian dishes on airlines often contain so many chemicals in them that the sheer damage to the environment from processing those chemicals outweighs just eating whatever meat dish they are offering. Flight attendants carry a paperclip around their neck and badge because sometimes when the masks are supposed to drop, they might not, and you have to use a paperclip to get your mask. As far as passengers, well, nobody really knows. The carpets on airplanes are not shampooed as often as you might think, and chances are your bare feet are right where someone made a mess recently. Most flight attendants are not paid during the boarding, so asking for a cup of water for a pill before takeoff annoys them and can delay takeoff. Flight attendants are not allowed to upgrade you for free to a more expensive cabin. They can be fired for that. They are allowed to upgrade employees, in most cases for free if there's an open seat. If they see you stealing an upgrade, you can be arrested for theft of service. Wow, a few of these things I didn't know. Good to know. And if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 14. Optician here. Blue light filtering in your glasses is a scam and is a disgrace to the integrity of optometry and opticianry on how it's just been fully accepted and pushed without any convincing evidence just because of money. Most frames are only made by a few manufacturers. Look for features in a frame you like thickness of material, spring hinges, whatever, not brand name. There's a good chance the cheaper stuff is made to the same standard and even by the same suppliers as the more expensive brands, and you'll find that the expensive stuff is made out of cheap materials just as frequently. You do not need polycarbonate lenses. It is usually an upsell. It is an awful, brittle material that scratches very easily with horrible optical qualities. If you have a lighter prescription, get CR39, and if you have a higher prescription, get high-index 1.67 or 1.74 lenses. The only time you need polycarbonate lenses is if they are for safety or sports frames. Aspheric lenses are not a scam, but offer little benefit to lighter RXs. Again, just an upsell 80% of the time. I would say to ask your opticians most of the time for guidance, but most of them will tell you to get more than what you need, either because of commission or required attachment rates for certain features, or because they are uneducated opticians who don't know anything about what they're doing. If you live in a state with no licensing requirements for opticians, which is like half of them, there's a good chance your optician has absolutely no prior experience or education. You can check or ask to see if they are certified, but that should be the bare minimum. I see my coworker, who has been an optician for 20 years, regularly make simple errors and bad adjustments that I often have to undo when patients come back a week later with ear or nose pain, and they refuse to get their certs because they know what they're doing. Lastly, if your optometrist ever writes your contact RX for AccuView 1-Day Max, get a new optometrist. It is a ridiculously expensive contact with little improvement over previous 1-Day AccuView lenses, and it's $1,200 for a year's supply at the cheapest. I cannot, in good faith, recommend such an expensive product when there are so many viable alternatives for 1/3 of the price. And here's a real hero for helping all of us four eyes out there. Thank you very much, sir or ma'am. Story 15. If you do not have health insurance, yay America, there are free pharmacy discount cards you can get that will drastically reduce the cost of your monthly medications. I learned about this from my little sister after I had been spending over $100 a month on a 30-day supply of generic Adderall for 3 years straight after losing my health insurance after I got divorced. Now I pay around $12. There are multiple pharmacy discount cards, and they all offer different discounts for different pharmacies, so I have signed up with pretty much all of them. Last year, I checked my pharmacy annual spend/savings amount, and I saved over $2,000 using these discount cards. Just make sure before you pick up your medication that you check online to see which discount card will give you the biggest discount. They often stay the same, but sometimes for some meds it changes. This also applies to pet medications. A lot of medications prescribed for your pet at your vet's office are human medications that can be filled at your local pharmacy at not only far less than the vet's office that marks it up substantially, but you can also use one of the pharmacy discount cards on top of it. It's insane. It makes me so frustrated knowing that so many pet owners might not be able to afford the meds their pets need because they don't know that they can save a ton with these cards. $35 down to $2 is awesome, and it adds up so quick. I don't even want to know how much I overspent over the years paying full price out of pocket because nobody at the counter felt the need to tell me, hey, I see you don't have insurance. Let's use a discount card to save you money. Story 16. Used to be a German sleep lab technician. As always, in the German healthcare system, knowing what should go on the prescription can really increase the likelihood of the insurance rubber stamping it. It pays to know someone that knows what to write down. Some things are easy. Complain about dry nose, get a humidifier for your CPAP machine. Some are a bit more complex. Want to get a heated tube? Chances increase if you ask during winter and your doctor needs to get the wording right. Now, I work in an archive, again, Germany, and one rule is already clear. We get to write down how much work something was and we bill accordingly. Nobody ever checks if it isn't outrageous. If you're bad to us, well, then something might take an hour more, increasing the cost. If you're a private person just trying to get something done, we might change the numbers the other way. Story 17. If you're in college and need financial aid but can't get it because of your parents' tax filings, you can ask the financial aid office for a professional judgment if you can prove you need it. Keep in mind that this puts the onus of determining aid eligibility on the school rather than the government, which means they take on the full risk if a student withdraws, which requires sending FSA funding back and then doesn't pay the money back. So schools tend to be strict about it. But it is possible. I processed several for students back when I worked in FSA. Most won't bring it up to students though because of the massive amount of paperwork you get buried under and the legwork it requires. Keep in mind, this is for people who have not lived with their parents for a while or had a hardship that meant their parents' income was high on paper but wasn't in practice due to debt, etc. The expectation is always that parents will contribute a portion of their income to their child's college's tuition. So you need to be able to prove that was not possible. For example, my mom got a cancer diagnosis that caused medical bills to pile up versus my parents bought a new car, so their higher car payment means they can't contribute. Story 18. I'm a residential contractor. The more personnel involved in a business, the higher the hourly rate. If you call a giant plumbing, electric, handyman company for service, it can be up to $200 an hour because there are managers, payroll, accounting, etc. The local owner, operator will be closer to $75 an hour due to lower overhead. Also, and this may be the real hack, check around Facebook groups for recommendations. Make sure the groups do not allow the participants to recommend themselves or family members. They have to be actual referrals. Personally, I do not advertise. I am strictly referrals to mom's fill-in-the-blank town. I have more work than I can get to, and they are all the best people. Everyone is pleasant and kind to me no matter how particular they are. I always ask on the phone where someone new got my name. Maybe the real hack is finding a good local tradesman and being good to them. In turn, they will be good to you. Story 19. This can be said for a lot of industries, but simply being kind can genuinely get you what you want and more. If you come in and ask for a tattoo but you're rude, you're either going to get the bare minimum in terms of design or no tattoo at all. Like, why on earth are people rude to the folks who are permanently marking their skin is beyond me. So many people get snappy when we suggest design changes, but we're not saying these things to be lazy or to do what we want. We're saying these things because we know what works and how things change as they heal and age. Now, if you come in and you're kind, pleasant, and receptive to suggestions, oh, honey, I will bend over backwards for you. I will be more than happy to work with you to design that tattoo. I literally will not care if you ask to move the stencil 5 times. You are being such a sweetheart, baby angel face, and you deserve the best tattoo that you can love forever. Here's a snack. Here's a stress ball. You got this. Story 20. The last fuel job I had also did a lot of trucking, picking up fuel from the refineries and delivering it to gas stations. Every once in a while, especially if the tanker trailer was manifold, and why they seem to be going away from manifold systems on the newer trailers, the driver might mess up and dump diesel into the gasoline tanks or vice versa. When this happened, they would have to completely pull out the cross-contaminated product and make that customer whole again by not only dropping off what they were supposed to deliver to that tank, but also replace what had already been in there that they messed up. So what did they do with this diesel fuel messed up concoction? They had a fuel station of their own on that property, and they'd take the messed up fuel and stick it in a messed up tank. And then, bit by bit, anytime they'd top off their diesel at their own gas station, they'd sneak 500 to 800 gallons of the messed up diesel and gas in there at a time to take it with until the messed up fuel was all gone. Story 21. If the initial representative at your card company can't refund your late fee, ask for a supervisor, nicely. At Citi, the amount a representative can refund depends on their rank and is determined by the system, not the actual person themselves. A supervisor can refund a higher amount, and at Citi at least, they can override the system if the system says no. When I worked there, I didn't actually supervise anyone. We just did takeover calls for these exact reasons. So you wouldn't be taking that supervisor away from any work than they're already doing. Just keep in mind the system may still say no if you've been refunded too many times, and that supervisor also has a limit on how many refunds they can do. You can try calling back and getting different people, though we note the accounts for everything, so if the soup sees that note, they may deny it, depending on the person. If you're in a pickle, though, it's still worth a try. Kind of related, but my last day, the very last call I got was someone asking for a refund for $30. I refunded all their fees, so they got $200 into their account. Happy birthday to that person. Story 22. Therapist here. The great majority of therapists have no clue how to help you. It's probably the easiest profession in the world to be lazy in because clients just assume we are thoroughly trained and always trying our best. In reality, the bar for entry into the profession is comedically low, and many therapists graduate from their programs not really having learned anything. You'd be appalled to learn how many retook their licensing exams 2 or 3 times before they even actually passed. Want to know if your new therapist will be good or not? Ask for a detailed treatment plan. The ones who know what they're doing won't be afraid to detail exactly how they plan to help you with your issues and with what treatment modalities. If they say no or say yes but never quite seem to get around to it, then it's likely they aren't confident enough in their skills to back up their diagnoses in writing or are simply just lazy. Find a new therapist. Story 23. Not my field specifically because I was just the only warehouse worker at the store, but I've learned a few things from everyday contact with consultants. I wondered how they know what product to sell without staying up to date with all of them and how they train new consultants in a span of a few days. It turned out that product numbers printed on price tags had a few extra numbers to them. They work like a tier system going from 1 to 3, which can change weekly even if the prices didn't change, been printing plenty of them almost every day. The higher the number, the bigger the need to sell it. So whenever a customer came and asked one of the consultants what TV, laptop, smartphone, microwave, etc. do they recommend and why, the consultants would look for a product with the highest tier and then try to lie their way into selling it to you. Story 24. Health insurance customer service? Yeah, the supervisor can actually do more for you than the regular reps. Don't be a schmuck about it. Let the rep try to help you first, because if it's something the reps can't handle, they're just going to hand you back to them, and now they kind of hate you. Don't scream, don't be mistreating. If you are, they're allowed to hang up on you. Understand that there are limits to what can be done. Your benefits are decided by your employer or the state or whoever your insurance comes from. They can't magically make a service covered. But if it's something in our power, like extra miles on a medical ride or expedited processing on a request, they'll probably do it as long as you weren't a schmuck to them or the rep. Ask them to call third parties with you. Honestly, if your carrier values customer satisfaction, they should be offering to do this, but not every company gives a care. If they tell you that you need to talk to the clinic, pharmacy, county, etc., ask them to call over with you. It'll save you having to go back and forth, and a lot of the time it's something you can just fix right then and there with everyone on the line. This goes double for any sort of form or request that goes between your insurance and providers. That thing is their job. They shouldn't be making you do the legwork. Get the codes, whatever procedure you're having done, get the CPT code, confirm what sort of facility will be on the claim, clinic, hospital, ambulatory surgery, etc., and find out if there will be ancillary charges like anesthesia, self-administered medications, take-home prescriptions, etc. When you call your insurance for a benefit quote, give them as much information as possible and ask as many questions as you can think of. If they give you the wrong information and you end up paying more, you can claim a misquote and maybe get the cost reduced or waived, but it has to be super specific. Like, quote, you told me it was $50 for procedure code 99213 at my primary care clinic, and the labs under code 80061 would be covered at no cost as part of the office visit. Now I just got a bill saying I'm being charged $300 for those same codes at my usual clinic. It all has to match exactly. Story 25. If it's not Kraft or Sargento, it's made by a third single company. That's it. There is a big three in the big cheese manufacturing game, excluding small batch mom and pop places. It doesn't matter what type of cheese or flavor it is, sliced or shredded or block form, American, cheddar, Swiss, Colby, Jack, Gouda, Pepper Jack, you name it, they make it. Great value brand cheese at Walmart and Kirkland, cheese made for schools, Best Choice, Subway, McDonald's, Wendy's, Dairy Queen, Burger King, Checkers, Whataburger, Jack in the Box, and many more. The company even has its own brand name cheese sold to some stores. They have one single difference, the wrapper. That's pretty much it. That's all that's changed. All American formulas are the same. All Swiss formulas are the same, and so on and so on. They can literally run the exact same cheese down the line for 7 days and only change the wrapper and the count of the cheese and the boxes it's shipped in. Don't worry about that timing. Everything is crazy sanitary and constantly checked. Food manufacturing places are the cleanest thing ever to work in and have a crazy amount of safety checks, as it should. ETA, the difference between white American and the usual color American, orange, is just dye. Same with most cheeses, honestly. Story 26. This applies to a wide range of social services work, but I want to be able to qualify you for services. People don't usually end up in this line of work if they don't want to help people. A lot of people talk themselves out of applying for and receiving benefits, but the reverse side of that is that it's very important for agencies to have an accurate idea of the need so they can get more funding and provide more support down the line. Even if you don't really need the benefits yourself all of the time, the way the funding streams tend to work is that it's better for you to use those benefits than to not use them. As an example, sometimes EBT programs will issue benefits to a targeted population. In that population, there are people who don't need the benefits and they don't use them. The thing is, that money isn't going somewhere else. That's a federal state agency that just gave you free money to spend in your town and city. Even if you don't need the funding, I'm sure a smaller local business would appreciate you buying from them. It also helps us at agencies because when it comes time to argue for funding, if we can show a larger number of people use their benefits and access them, it's easier for us to get more money and push it to the people who do need help. Story 27. Teacher here. Some students are flat out argumentative, will not stop the conversation, will not return to his or her seat, just will continue to press and argue. Tell them if the problem or situation is that important, they can see you at the end of the school day or before the next day of school, offer a pass for their first hour, 99% of the kids will not show up for those arguments. They want the argument in class. Nope. And if they show up, seriously, go ahead and talk about it then. Once no one is there, they are way calmer. If they persist, go silent, get up and move, start working on something else or with other students. They want to argue. It's all they have, just keeping the conversation going. Tell them you are done, and if they wish to continue, they can come see you at the end of the school day. If they persist, just stop, like you said, done, walk away, and do not engage. When I say I'm done with this conversation right now, I mean it. They have time slots to visit me, and they have email as well, not in front of class. Story 28. We could absolutely turn a coal plant into one that doesn't put out any carbon into the atmosphere. Nobody on either side of the aisle has any interest in doing it. Fossil fuel companies give it lip service, but they don't actually want to do it because the cost eats into their profit margin. Environmental groups don't want them to do it because they don't get donations to collaborate on interim solutions that are less than ideal. Researchers came up with it in the early 90s and actually got a pilot-scale version in the later Clinton years. Basically, the concept is that you need to convert elemental carbon into carbon dioxide to generate energy. So any use of carbon fuel must generate carbon dioxide, which we always assume is by burning it in the presence of oxygen, combustion. But they came up with a way to basically create carbonated water. Yes, then you have to get rid of this waste stream in some other way, but aside from reuse, there are methods to sequester the carbon we produce for the next 100 years or so, while the other technology becomes more viable. To put it in the most straightforward terms, it's a simple two-step process that just involves a lot of careful control. First, the carbon fuel is superheated in the presence of water vapor, very hot, around 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. This creates a mix of carbon monoxide and hydrogen gases, which after a simple oxidation shift turns into carbonated water as it cools below 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And this all takes place in a confined reactor, so nothing is emitted to the atmosphere. After this, the hydrogen gas is separated and burned. Combusting hydrogen gas emits no carbon. It's a simple reaction of 2H2 plus O2 becomes 2H2O. Nothing but water vapor in the stack. The carbonated water is the main waste stream, but it can be reused for industrial purposes or simply sequestered. My colleague was doing his PhD dissertation on long-term carbonate sequestration in offshore shale formations around 1999. I was doing research on the membranes that can separate the carbonate from the hydrogen. There was a very promising project that was going to be a full-scale demonstration of a coal plant with zero carbon emissions. About 25% of the power generation has to be looped back to provide the heat for baking the reactor, and another 5% for the membrane pressure, but that still leaves 70% of the power of a normal plant. It was not meant to be a forever solution, just an interim means to bridge the gap and cut down on atmospheric carbon until green energy became viable for 100% of our needs. Then Bush won the 2000 election and shut down the project and nearly all federal funding for climate change research. They didn't want anything to do with it because 30% of a plant's energy production is more like 90% of their profit margins. It would have turned energy production into a public service with no major profit like the water industry instead of a lucrative monopoly with a captive audience. So we spent the last 25 years ignoring a viable solution, and they exploited the polarity of the issue to make both sides hate it. For a quarter century, we dumped around 30 billion metric tons of carbon per year into the atmosphere because of partisan hackers. And now it's just moot. Gasification isn't even economically feasible anymore because solar has almost caught up to it in price point, and we have far better energy storage technology now, even though it will probably take another 25 years to see solar become our primary energy source. It makes no political sense to try to change course now. It's just a shame to watch the planet burning, knowing that even when solar seemed too expensive, we had a viable option in our grasp, but nobody wanted to listen to us. But if you enjoyed listening to these stories and you want more of them, here you go. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for hanging with me on this one.